honor those that have sacrificed, those that have served. We're going to honor you in a fashion, I think, that is equal to, not to the fullness of your service and sacrifice, but we have a great program today to honor you. And so it is my honor to introduce, I don't know if he's been introduced in these particular terms before, but and probably has, but not just an American patriot, but I would say a patriotic war hero. Amen. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Kelly, United States Air Force, was born in Pawnee County, graduated from Pawnee High School in 1958, received a Bachelor of Architecture degree from Oklahoma State University in 1964, and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. Completed Air Force pilot training at Vance Air Force Base in Enid, Oklahoma. 1967, he was assigned as a pilot to fly the United States Air Force McDonnell Douglas F-4C Phantom jet fighter with the 480th Tactical Fighter Squadron at Da Nang Air Force Base in the Republic of South Vietnam. 1968, on January 16th, his aircraft was hit while making a bombing run in North Vietnam. He was forced to eject over enemy territory. He has completed over 100 missions over the North. He was reassigned then to the 58th Military Airlift Squadron at Robins Air Force Base in Georgia, where he flew the United States Air Force Lockheed C-141 on military missions around the world. And so it is my distinct honor to introduce to you Lieutenant Corporal Jack Kelly.
Thank you for that introduction. I don't think I've ever been introduced like that before, but it was great. I had a prepared speech. I don't know where it went to, so I'm going to have to just speak off the cuff. I had a nice career. I ended up leaving active duty and moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and ultimately got my license as an architect. When I graduated from OSU, I had a degree in architecture. And I've been here in Tulsa ever since. While I was here, I got word from the Air Force that if I didn't find another flying position, they're going to take me off flight status. Well, I hadn't been on active duty for about 6 years. I didn't realize I was still on flight status. So I quickly called out the Air Guard and said, well, you got anything for me to fly out there? And they said, no, but we were preparing the base to change from fighters to C-141s. And of course, I could fly the fighter if I wanted to, but I'd have to go back to active duty for 6 months training. And I was in no way in the world I could take off 6 months from my business to do that. So I said, well, I'll just wait for something else. And said, we're going to have the C-141 here very soon. And so I joined the Tulsa Air National Guard Base. And they never did get the C-141. And ultimately, I retired as a lieutenant colonel from the Tulsa Air Guard as a commander of the engineering squadron. But back up to when my event occurred in Vietnam, which is what everybody wants to hear. On January 16th, some 52 plus years ago, I was flying at the altitude of 23,000 feet at the speed of sound. which is about 600 miles an hour. And I was in a flight of 2 F-4 Phantom jets. This was the 145th combat mission that I had flown in Vietnam, and it was the 85th mission over North Vietnam. My airplane was blown apart. The right wing was completely ripped off. I was looking out the side of the right wing, watching bombs come off the lead aircraft, and the wing just blew up, whipped right off like that. And I couldn't believe that happened. Up until that time, I thought I was invincible. But the Lord evidently had something else in mind. So I was trying to diagnose all that. I ejected within less than a half a second. I pulled the ejection and announced I was departing the airplane. And caught me off guard because the pilots have, and most pilots fly with they got a shield that comes down in front of you pull down over your helmet. It's the windshield, so that when you come out and hit the wind, your head is stable. When I came out of that airplane at 600 miles an hour, my head began to flail like a rag in the wind, 600 miles an hour. And it took a while for my body to slow down before I was stabilized again. But once I was stable, I was going down and I was still in the seat. The seat comes with you, and there's a little drag chute that goes on the seat that holds it, stabilizes it. And I decided, well, I don't know whether this thing is going to work or not, so I separated from the seat. And when you separate from the seat, then your own personal parachute deploys. And my chute deployed at, I don't know, 18,000 feet. So it took a while for me to get to the ground. Actually, I never ever made it to the ground, fortunately, for me and 2 of the other pilots. Because as I was floating down, there was clouds, so I could not see the ground. Didn't have any idea where I was going to hit. But began thinking about things, and I talked to the other pilots. There was three other pilots that had got both planes, the explosion did. And they were all fine. Everybody was fine. They ejected safely. And of course, the first thing I thought of was my family. And I prayed to the Lord that they would take care of them. And he did. But couldn't hear anything. I didn't hear anybody talking. Didn't know what was going on until later. After I hit the clouds, I couldn't see anything at all. And then I went through this layer, and I had it was about a 500-foot ceiling, and I could see the jungle out there. Solid jungle, rolling hills. And so I prepared myself for hitting the trees. And they teach us to keep our legs tight together so you don't get hung up and try to go through that tree limb like a spear. Fortunately, my chute hung up at a place where I was fairly secure, but I was hanging in the parachute straps, and I was talking a moment ago with one of the other gentlemen here who was in the Army and had parachuted but had never hung in the straps. And hanging in the parachute straps is something that you don't want to do more than 3 or 4 seconds. Ultimately, I was there for about 4.5 hours. And I'll try to remember what happened. I don't prepare the speech, I just think through it. The very first thing I was thinking about is how I was going to get out of those straps. And fortunately, there was a limb right over here, and I was able to raise my legs up and put my legs up on that limb, which took the pressure off of the strap. And so I was very comfortable, and I said, well, since I'm comfortable, I'm going to stay here for a while and see if I can't get a hold of a rescue helicopter. And so I turned on my radio, and I turned on the emergency beacon, and let it beep for about, and then I turned it off. And then I'd listen. And then I'd turn it on and I turned it off. And then I heard something on the radio. It says, I hear someone's beacon coming off, and then I came up on the radio and tried to talk to them, and I did. And they said, okay, I gave them an approximate location where I thought I was, which was about 50 miles north of the demilitarized zone in North Vietnam. And they said, well, we'll get an airplane in there and get you out. About, let me back up a moment. After I hit the trees and got myself settled, I listened, because I didn't know it was going to be somebody on the ground coming around, or where I was, close to a road or something. Of course, I could not see the ground. Those trees are 200 foot tall, and there's layers and layers and layers of leaves below you, so you never know. And when they taught us not to jump down because you think the ground is right there, because it's not. The jungle was just absolute quiet, not a thing of noise. And after, I just thought, well, I'll just listen, see if I can hear any cars or trucks or anybody coming. And then after about 5 minutes, the jungle became alive. Noises of all kinds you've never heard before in your life. Wild animals, birds, sounded like Indians screaming. And so I said, well, okay, I guess I'm okay up here. And then I heard a pilot calling out, and I came up on radio and says, yeah, hey, I'm here. And it was an A-1 Air Force rescue prop aircraft that had been brought in. Very maneuverable aircraft, and they can fly in the mountainous areas safely. He said, okay, I'm going to fly, you're off you're off to the south of me, so I'm going to turn and fly towards you. And when you see me or hear me pass by, shout at him. And so he, at this time, came off to the west, and I could hear him passing off to the west. I said, okay, I hear you passing off to the west. Okay, so he turned to the east, and he came around to the south side. Let me know when I pass you on the south. So, yeah, you're south. And then he did it again. He turned north, and I told him, well, you're off to the west, east of me now. And then he turned to the east, and I could see him. I said, okay, I see you. You're directly north of me again. And he said, all right, pop a flare. And I had a can of smoke. And I popped that smoke, and that smoke started filtering up above the canopy of the jungle. And he said, okay, well, I see your smoke. I'm headed your way. I see your chute. All right, I know exactly where you're at. Stay there, and I'll get a helicopter out here to you. How did he get to me? I passed that up. He was flying above the clouds, and that's when I was talking to him. He said, well, I'm going to try to get down out of the clouds and find a place so I can get down. He had to go out to the Gulf of Tonkin, out over the water, to the to the east, and he let himself down through those clouds over the ocean till he saw the water, and then he turned back and came back west and flew to the coast at low altitude and followed the way up a valley to get to where I was at in North Vietnam. And that's the most highly defended country ever against aircraft. So he said, just don't go anywhere and I'll bring you a helicopter. Well, I said, okay. I'll just sit here then for a while. I don't know how long it was, but it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I was shot down. And it's hard to keep track of jungle time, but several hours had passed. And he had, and I learned of this afterwards, but he had gone out into the western part of North Vietnam and Laos, and had called in a helicopter come from, it was a Jolly Green Giant that was flying out of Thailand, and it took a while. But when he got to the valley where I was at, or very near the valley, he was above the clouds. So the Rescue A-1 pilot was below the clouds, and he gave the helicopter a letdown on top of his position in a valley where he could be safe from running into a mountain. So where he could see So then once the helicopter had visual references to the ground, he and the helicopter headed over towards back where I was at, several miles. A few miles away, they flew over the pilot that I had been with in my aircraft. They hadn't heard of him, and he just said, popped up on the phone, hey, I hear you, I see you up there, come and get me first. And so the A-1 pilot called me back, and he said, well, listen, we found your fellow pilot here. You want us to pick you up first or go ahead and get him? Well, he's right here. I can see him. I said, well, go ahead and get him. So his life was saved that day. Then I was thinking, well, he said, how long are you going to take? Oh, about a half hour. The limb broke about that time. It was holding me up. And I thought, well, guess I'm going to have to go down on the ground. Now, when they trained me in to fly planes in Vance Air Force Base, they had also trained us on how to get out of the tree. And they inserted in a nylon strap. It's about ½ inch wide and about 200 feet long, 250 feet long, I believe it is. And that strap was curled into my survival vest, which weighed a lot. That extra weight was really pulling on those straps. When we practiced that hanging back in the advance to hang in the strap, we didn't have a survival suit hung on our vest on us, so the weight was not even the same. And as I said, 4 or 5 seconds is all you want of that. So I was thinking, well, my eyes are starting to black out, cutting off that blood circulation. And I had wanted to stay up on top of the tree because I thought it'd be easier for them to rescue me from there. So I said, well, okay, I'll just go on down to the ground because I can't stay up here in the tree any longer. And so I took the end of the rappelling device that's in there. You can hook that to your harness, and then you do your. I was thinking very slowly because my blood circulation had slowed down my thinking ability, and I said, okay, now I know you're taking your release, these quick releases that you got on your chute, and you'll be separated from the chute. And I was just getting ready to do that when pop, 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 that chopper come over my head. By the way, if you ever get shot down and you hear a chopper come over your head, that's the best sound you ever hear in your life. So I said, okay, I'll just hang here a little longer. Good thing too, because I was just before I was getting ready to do this, I had forgotten. You also have to hook the strap to the tree or to your parachute. And so if I'd have done that, everything would have gone down together. But anyway, the Lord saved me. And he saved my fellow pilot. And the other two pilots they had not heard from. So they sent a paramedic down on the cable, and where he came down was about 15 feet away from me. And I couldn't get to him, and he couldn't get to me, and I could no longer talk to the people in the helicopter because the noise was so loud. So I just sat there and waited a little longer. Pretty soon they figured out they pulled him back up and moved over, and he came back down. And then he got close enough to me that we could grab each other, and he pulled out a machete, and he just slapped me, cut all those parachute straps free, and we were one. He pulled me up. When I got up to the top of the doorway of the helicopter, there was my buddy, Major Charles Lewis, and very thankful, both of us. The helicopter took us back to their base in Nakhon Phanom, Thailand, and we went into, I can't remember if they gave us something to eat or not, but we went, because by that time it was dark. In fact, the helicopter had to turn on his lights to pick me up, which would be and is probably the only night pickup in a hostile environment for them to turn on the lights like that, ever. Lord save me again. The pilot of the chopper was a family I knew over in Pawnee County. He was from Pawnee also. There was an article in the Tulsa Tribune that came out a couple of days later. It said, "Sooner rescues his sooner." The other thing is that the next morning, of course, I went to they put us in the barracks that night, and the next morning I woke up and I was going to get out of my bunk, and I couldn't move my head. It wouldn't move. And so I had to roll over and get my body on the ground and kind of keep my head up above. So that was a problem that apparently had given me what the doctor says now was severe whiplash. But so I walked over to the clinic, which was only a block or so away, and they kind of examined me and said, "Well, we're going to put this neck brace on you." And I wore that for about 2 weeks before I could
get my muscle pain back, muscle strength back. But when I got back to Da Nang, they flew us from Thailand to Da Nang the next morning after I left the barracks. They said that they had been up, sent a rescue effort up that next day, and they'd finally gotten contact with the other pilots, but they lost, the rescue airplane was shot down, getting them out. And then the weather was really bad. And so they went back, shut the rescue effort off, and then on day 3, went back up again. The weather had cleared up, and there was a big battle. The whole Air Force stopped coming up there to get those pilots out. And they were able to get out one of them. And then third pilot, Lieutenant Tom Moe, said, well, you guys might as well give it up because they're standing here in front of me and they're saying, you go Hanoi. And he did. He spent 5 years in Hanoi as John McCain's roommate before he was released and was flown home. But it's quite an event. Never forget it. Makes a good story. I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has. I know that we may be out of time. I got a little bit of time left. So if anybody has a question, raise your hand. We'll get you a mic.
How long was it till you got back in the air?
Well, they said I could go on an R&R anywhere I wanted to go. And so I said, well, I've not been to Australia. I'd like to go there. Okay. And I said, I want to take my fine buddy, a guy named Vance Sedin. He went to pilot training with me at Vance Air Force Base, and he was stationed there at Da Nang with me. And I said, I want to take Vance. He said, okay. So we went, loaded up on a private airliners. I think it might have been American. It could have been United, but they came to Da Nang and picked us up and flew us to Sydney, Australia. And well, that's kind of another story too. The Australians were very nice people. They thought we drank a lot of beer. I guess back when World War II that's all those guys did was drink beer. I wasn't much of a beer drinker, so but I could do something else. So, well, we can take you out to the outback and you can go fishing. So I like to do that. So they hauled us out to the outback, and we were housed in a farmhouse. A nice farmer put us up there for a night or two, and then he took us out fishing. And he said, first we got to dig some worms. We're going to fish for some catfish. And he said, okay. I said, all right. So he's driving down the road, and he stopped there along the corner of the road and said, this might be a good place. And so he had a shovel, and I can't remember whether he saw one crawling along or what it was, but he says, now, it's going to take 2 of us to get him. So he said he started digging, and the worm was huge. I think it was like about 2 foot long and as big as your thumb, and fast. And you got to dig real fast till you dig him out. We're going to hang on to it. So that's what we did. We got this big long worm, and we cut him up in segments and went fishing. And we did catch some fish. But yeah, that was fun. Any other questions?
Hi, Colonel.
Hi.
Randy Barnett, Marine Corps aviator. Would you be at liberty to comment on some of the present situations that the powers that be have got us into? And do you talk with other vets about these pointless wars and the war that's come to our front door, southern border? Are you talking with folks about what to do, state and county level, to deal with this?
Well, Biden and the Democrats have gotten this country in a mess. And I believe that the Lord is preparing this country for great things. Amen. Yeah.
Yes, sir. What's your call sign? And can you tell in public how you got it? And did you carry that with you to Airlift Command?
Well, I still use the call sign. It was the flight was 2 Air 4s, and the call sign that day was gunfighter flight, and it was gunfighter 1 and gunfighter 2. I was in the second airplane, so I was gunfighter 2, and then there's two pilots in each plane, and of course I was the gunfighter 2 Bravo, 2 Alpha and 2 Bravo. At that time, there were two pilots in the planes. The Air Force was putting in fully trained pilots for the front and back seat, and I was in the back seat as gunfighter 2 Bravo. It's my call sign.
Personal call.
Personal call sign? I don't have one.
Thank you so much for sharing this impactful story. You mentioned that it's something that you could never forget. Well, yeah, we all understand that. But what would you say was your greatest takeaway for the following 50 years of your life that this experience had on you?
Well, that's a tough one. Obviously, I guess the greatest takeaway is that it convinced me that the Lord has a purpose in my life, and I don't know what that is just yet. I'm still working on it, but I've been successful. I've had a successful practice in architecture. I designed St. John's Hospital. I become a board-certified hospital architect, which is only 4 in the state of Oklahoma. And so I specialize in that medical design. But I'm semi-retired now.
Amen. Amen. Let's give another hand for Colonel.